Batter My Heart is a celebrated sonnet, which is one of the most daring and dramatic compositions of John Donne. The theme of the poem is the paradox of death and rebirth. The sonnet develops two metaphors, the first, that of a besieged castle, and the second, of marriage. The poem is in the form of a prayer to the god. The poet urges the Almighty to break and remake him as a vessel would be enough to receive divine grace. The poet requests God to abandon his mild ways and adopt stern measures to reclaim him from from the devil's clutches. He asks the Lord to batter his heart, break, blow, and burn, and make him new. The poet is like a besieged town whose viceroy is held captive by the enemy. The poet's dilemma is that he loves God, but he is now like a woman betrothed to God's enemy, Satan. The poet prays to God to use force and break the unholy bond between the devil and himself. So, how can we write an introduction? Batter My Heart, 3% God is one of the most celebrated holy sonnets of John Donne. Maybe you can mention it's the Holy Sonnet 14. It belongs to his collection of holy sonnets written during a period of intense spiritual struggle. It's early 17th century. So the poem reflects Donne's intense spiritual struggle and his desire for divine salvation. It exemplifies characteristics of metaphysical poetry through its intellectual complexity, paradoxes, dramatic tone, and striking imagery. Okay, so the poem presents a speaker's desperate plea to God for spiritual renewal. Donne employs powerful metaphysical conceits. Yeah, you can use extra words, powerful, metaphysical conceits, then paradoxes and violent imagery or striking imagery to depict the soul's longing for divine grace. Now, coming to the theme, the major themes of this poem. The central theme of the poem is the speaker's yearning for spiritual regeneration. The poem reflects a conflict between sin and faith, and the speaker recognizes his inability to save himself and seeks God's intervention. So Donne feels that ordinary divine intervention is insufficient to save his sinful soul. Therefore, he implores the Holy Trinity to batter or violently transform him. The poem presents a soul torn between sin and redemption, reflecting the Christian belief in human weakness and dependence on divine grace. So, according to Donne, salvation is possible only through God's transformative power rather than human effort. The speaker's sinful condition requires complete destruction and reconstruction before redemption can occur. So, the relationship between God and the soul is portrayed through the imagery of a lover seeking complete union with the beloved. Next is about the metaphysical elements. So, one of the most remarkable features of the poem is its use of metaphysical conceits. Donne compares himself to a besieged town that has been captured by God's enemy. The image conveys the helplessness of the human soul under the influence of sin. Another striking conceit is drawn from marriage and love. The speaker describes himself as betrothed to God's enemy and asks God to divorce him. So these unconventional comparisons transform abstract spiritual concerns into vivid and concrete experiences. It illustrates the speaker's spiritual condition. Next is paradox and contradiction. Paradox is central to the poem. There are many famous paradoxes like imprison me, for I except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste except you ravish me. So the apparent contradictions reveal Donne's belief that true freedom can be attained only through complete surrender to God. Similarly, spiritual purity can be achieved only when divine grace overwhelms that sinful self. Such paradoxes are characteristic of metaphysical poetry. Now, coming to the language and style, the poem employs forceful verbs, strong and forceful diction such as batter, break, blow, burn, and ravish. These words create a sense of urgency and intensity. The dramatic direct address to God resembles a passionate conversation rather than a conventional prayer. The poem's emotional power is reinforced by its argumentative structure and logical progression. The poem progresses through logical reasoning. There are use of paradox and irony. There are combination of religious devotion and secular love imagery. There is dense intellectual and emotional expression. Now let's see the religious significance. The sonnet reflects the religious anxieties of the Renaissance period. Donne's struggle illustrates the tension between human sinfulness and divine mercy. The poem emphasizes the necessity of God's grace in achieving salvation, a theme deeply rooted in Christian theology. So, Batter My Heart represent God is a powerful expression of spiritual anguish and the longing for redemption. Through metaphysical conceits, paradox, dramatic intensity, and profound religious insight, Donne transforms a personal spiritual crisis into a universal exploration of faith and salvation. The poem remains one of the finest examples of metaphysical poetry in English literature. So, you can write like this. It exemplifies the characteristics of metaphysical poetry through its complexity, originality, and emotional intensity, and then transforms a personal spiritual crisis into a universal exploration of faith and redemption. So the poem demonstrates that true freedom can be achieved only through complete surrender to divine power. Now, here is a question for you to practice writing. Discuss John Donne's Batter My Heart as a metaphysical poem. Try writing in different ways so that it becomes very easy for you to come up with good answers. Bye. See you in next class.